Good afternoon, everybody. We have a few reminders before we begin today's event.
First off, please take this moment right now to silence all of your cell phones, watches, and other devices right now. You also are not permitted to record any part of today's event while in the theater. This will include photo, video, and audio.
Don't worry, there will be professional photos of the event uploaded to Flickr afterwards, and all recordings of these talks will be uploaded to the official TEDx YouTube channel after the event for you to watch again and enjoy later.
Now is also a good time for me to point out where those exits are going to be. There are 2 exits down here at the bottom of the theater, as well as 2 up at the top of the theater.
If you need to exit for personal reasons at any point during the event, please use the doors at the top.
Thank you, and the event will begin shortly.
Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this year's TEDxVCU event. We are so excited to have you here, both in person as well as via live stream. My name is Deepa Rao.
And I'm Ali Autry.
And we are the directors of TEDxVCU. As a TEDx organization, our mission is to share ideas worth spreading from the heart of the VCU community. This year's event theme is Bloom. To bloom is to acknowledge that growth is not linear but inevitable, and to embrace opportunity in every form that it takes. This year, our community has been challenged by a host of storms, both figurative as well as literal. And in the face of adversity, we've strengthened each other by coming together to inspire growth, weathering these storms, deepening our roots, and continuing to flourish. Today, we've curated a series of talks from a host of speakers with inspiring stories of resilience and opportunity, aiming to cultivate unity, inspire growth, and sow the seeds of a flourishing future for all.
When watching these talks, may inspiration take root in your mind, and may you leave this theater today feeling inspired to spread all you've learned to the others in your life. After all, ideas can only truly bloom once they've been shared. We don't truly begin to bloom until we draw from our common experiences and find the space in our lives to support each other. Growth may be both an individual and a communal act, but we are far more resilient for daring to grow together. So, for the next 2 hours, I encourage you to learn from your community, to grow with your neighbor. And remember, to bloom is to change, and ideas change everything.
Before we begin today's show, we wanted to share with you that one of our speakers, Chris Martiniano, is unfortunately unable to join us tonight. We are saddened to lose such a stellar addition to our lineup, and we wanted to acknowledge all of the work and the effort that he has put into today's event. Please join us in sending him well wishes, and keep an eye out for him next year. Now, on with the show. First up, we have Tom Ilmansey, an entrepreneur, musician, and VCU Interdisciplinary Studies alum. Tom is up here tonight to share his tried and true technique for promoting human connection. Please welcome Tom.
Hi. Here is a recipe for profound human connection. 1 part creative self-expression, 1 part pressurized collaboration. Add drums, bass, guitar, a piano, a saxophone, a vocalist, and maybe a purple kazoo. Maybe not this one. Hold on. Okay, yeah. Maybe not this kazoo. I don't know. Bake that for 7 minutes, and what you get is a jam session. I'm co-founder of an organization that has produced hundreds of jam sessions from jazz to blues, electronic to funk and soul. Over the course of 8 years, hundreds of songs, hundreds of music makers, from super beginner to super pro. We've learned a lot about how creativity and collaboration happen on stage. Along the way, we've identified 3 ways that can make a jam session crash. And we've developed 3 invitations that can help everyone play together with flow, courage, and joy. Now imagine you are sitting in an elegant nightclub straight out of the movies. The clinking of martini glasses, dim light, the hum of private conversations all around, a packed house. Now on stage under the lights, we have a drum set here, we have a baby grand piano here, guitars and bass in the back. There's room for a horn section up front. This is where the vocalist will stand. In the audience are 24 people who have signed up to play a song or 2. So I call up a drummer, a bass player, a couple of guitar players, only 2, too many, a saxophonist, a trombonist, and a vocalist. They find their way to the stage. They barely know each other's names, and they have no idea what song they're going to play yet. And the 100 people in the audience cannot wait to hear what happens next. Scary, right? So as the onstage coach, it's my job to get everybody playing together as fast as we can and with some semblance of cohesion. So we know a little bit about the people coming on stage from the sign-up sheet. So we know that the bass player is an intermediate level who is feeling a little shaky because they've never performed in front of an audience before. And we know the drummer is proficient and experienced on stage. So what can we give the band that is interesting and challenging enough without it being too difficult and too hard? I think I've got the song. We're going to try to play Low Rider by War. Do you know how the song goes? Have you heard it? Okay, I'll sing it for you. Not a singer. The hook goes like this. That's the hook. I'm going to keep going. Pretty simple, one chord. So we all listen to the song over the speakers for just a few seconds as a reference. We get the key, we get the chord, we get the tempo, and it's time to play. I count it in. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're off. Now, the players on stage are not primarily musicians. They're doctors, lawyers, nurses, cooks, software developers, students, teachers. Very few are professional musicians. This is the breakthrough, having everybody and anybody on stage with us. And here's what seems to be true about every player on the stage, no matter if they're a super beginner or super experienced pro. These are the things that show up on stage. The first is everybody arrives with their inner critic, their +1. And these inner critics have very strong opinions about everybody on stage, including the person they came in with. The inner critic is saying things like, "You don't know this song well enough. You're not good enough on your instrument yet to be up here. You don't know what you're doing. You're making mistakes. Everyone can hear your mistakes." Right now, my inner critic is telling me to get off this dot. What is your inner critic telling you? But this is the issue, is how do we manage all these inner critics that are also on stage with all of these very difficult and challenging and erroneous opinions? So that's our first challenge. How do we make a jam session work when we have all these inner critics? The second challenge is when players who are maybe a little less experienced in live performance get on stage, they tend to be overly focused on themselves. They have this ability to almost ignore what everyone else is doing around them. They're really concerned about how they sound and how they feel and what they're going to do. They have a plan. They're really focused in on their heads. And as you can tell, this is contrary to a collaborative creative exercise. We need everybody to be together, an ensemble. So our next challenge is, how do we get that singular nervous person to somehow form a bond with the other people on stage in real time? We don't have a lot of time to break the ice either. We really need to get that cohesion going as fast as we can. The third issue is this. Every player, the super pro, even the most experienced, arrives on stage feeling vulnerable and afraid. Fear is the mind killer. The amygdala is part of the brain that processes threats. It's your fight or flight response. And when people step on stage, that fear is there. And fear is the thing that is going to inhibit creativity. We need people to be brave and take chances, make mistakes. But if they're too afraid to do that, they're going to retreat to a safe place. They're going to play a familiar riff that they've played 400 times. They're going to play a scale they think they know really well. But that's not necessarily being creative. That's not necessarily expressing themselves. So those are the three issues that we're facing in every single jam session, hundreds of them. The first is that pesky inner critic is showing up. And that inner critic is not necessarily the most musical presence in the room. The second is we have players who are overly focused on themselves, and they have not been able to yet tap into the group around them. And the third is fear, overcoming that fear. Being brave on stage is a hard thing to do. So these are the three invitations that we've developed to help everyone play together with cohesion and flow. We've done this many times, and we find they mostly work. So first, we respond to the inner critic with an invitation to be cool. Just be cool. We say to everyone in the room, this is a place for peace, love, kindness, and respect. Can we be cool with each other? That's not a rhetorical question. Can we be cool with each other? Yes. Doesn't that feel good? That affirmation of peace and love is directed at yourself first. It's directed at that inner critic. That inner critic can point a little peace and love at you. Starting from that place of peace and love and acceptance for everybody in the room is just the starting point. So we start with being cool. The second issue of focus is an invitation to listen. We tell everybody in the room to give their full attention to the players on stage. And then we address the people playing, and we say, the most important thing you can do when you're up here with us is not play. That usually is the response we get. What? You don't want me to play? I'm ready to go. Here's what we mean. The space between the notes is the good part. That's what Prince told us. The space between the notes is the good part. So we invite those players to put a little nothing in their something. It's okay to lay out. It's okay to pause. It's okay to pay attention to the person across from you. You don't have to play the whole time. You can just be present on stage, absorbing what's happening around you. Duke Ellington, the great jazz composer and pianist, said one of the qualities that makes any musician superb is their ability to listen. And listening and hearing are different things. I might define it as this. Listening is your ability to absorb the sound and then have thoughts about it. Let it inspire you. Have some questions. Have some answers. You process it in real time. Hearing is just allowing a sound to enter your brain and registering that a sound happened. One of my favorite classical composers, Igor Stravinsky, said, To hear has no merit. A duck hears also. So listening is the breakthrough, and that's our invitation. The other bit about listening that's so important on stage is that we're mostly improvising the music. No one has prepared in advance, so we're making it up as we go. The beautiful thing about improvised music is that it forces us into the present moment. We can't be 4 beats ago, and we're not thinking about 19 beats from now. We're thinking about right this minute, right this moment together. And as we know from the Stoics, the present moment is the only real tangible thing we have. The past is gone. The future hasn't arrived yet. All we have is right now. So that's a precious gift that listening can give us when we're on stage. Now, the third part, the fear that is coming on stage, our invitation to the audience is to have courage. We tell everyone in the room that the stage is the place for bravery. This is the place to make mistakes. This is the place to push yourself. This is the place to get outside of your comfort zone, because all the good stuff you want is just outside that boundary line. And we take care of each other when we're on stage. We appreciate gestures of bravery and courage. We celebrate them. My kazoo failed. It was kind of a brave thing to try a purple kazoo in front of you all, and, well, I survived that problem. So those are the 3 things that we do in our jam sessions. We respond to the inner critic with an invitation for peace, love, kindness, and respect. Be cool. We respond to the focus problem with an invitation to listen, to be present in the moment we have together. And third, we respond to fear with an invitation for courage and bravery. And this seems to work in any kind of jam session, any kind of music, any kind of player. And I would like to demonstrate that with you right now, because we are going to have a jam session. No, we're going to do this. We're going to have a jam. I'm going to borrow a page from the composer Pauline Oliveros. Wouldn't it be cool if you could go home tonight and tell your friends and family that you sang in a TED Talk? It's happening. It's happening. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to sing the word hello to you, and I would like for you to sing hello to someone else in this room. You can sing my note, you can sing another note that you hear, or you can sing an entirely made-up note. Now here's the thing. You don't have to be a singer or a musician to do this well. I bet you can guess what you need. 3 things. You need to be cool. You need to listen. And you need to have courage. Are we ready? I'm counting it in. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hello. Amazing. We're a band. 3 simple things. Being cool, listening, and having courage can unlock this moment for us. Here's the thing. These invitations may have some value for you in your workplace, in your classroom, in your marriage. It goes far beyond the stage, and we'd invite you to practice these things. Be cool, listen, and have courage on any stage you stand upon. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for your jam session and for handing down your recipe for human connection. What advice would you give to someone struggling to silence their inner critic and be cool?
Oh, that's a great question. There is no silencing the inner critic. You must make friends with your critic. You must understand your critic. You must detect when the critic is speaking. And it's always difficult to know. I saw this fantastic bumper sticker somewhere. It said, don't believe everything you think. So understand your inner critic. Quieting it down or silencing it is a losing battle. Just understand it.
Thank you again, Tom, for bringing us all together through music and showing us how to keep connecting.
Next up, we have Jay Lang, an advocate and social worker pursuing a degree in social work. They'll be drawing on their lived experiences and their advocacy for those experiencing housing instability and will provide us wonderful insights on how we can best support our neighbors in such circumstances and promote dignity and autonomy for all. Please welcome Jay to the stage.
What would it feel like if you woke up tomorrow and you had no control over where you would sleep, what you would eat, or even the safety of yourself and your personal belongings? Well, this is the reality for people all over who are experiencing homelessness. And this was reality for me when my family was evicted and I went from sleeping in a comfy bed in my childhood home to the trunk of my SUV. That is where it all began. Hi again, my name is Jay Lang, and I use they, them pronouns. And today I would like to talk to you a little bit about something that is often dismissed in our society: the importance of balancing support and autonomy for people experiencing homelessness. I believe that there's a common misconception that simply providing a resource or a service is enough, and it's not. And today I came here to change that mindset. There are so many harmful misconceptions about people who are experiencing homelessness, and all of those contribute to the stigma and the discrimination that they face. One of the most damaging, in my opinion, is the belief that homelessness is a choice or that it's the result of laziness or of drugs. According to HUD, about 772,000 people lived without housing within the US just last year. 2 years ago in 2023. For context, let's look locally. Let's look at the Siegel Center and how big of a building that is. We would have to build 100 more Siegel Centers just to be able to fit every person that's experiencing homelessness. These people are not lazy. They do not all do drugs. They're not battling addictions. And they're not all in a mental health crisis. Other misconceptions include the assumption that every person experiencing homelessness is dangerous, dirty, or untrustworthy, and that is simply and blatantly ignoring the complex realities and the humanity of their situations. Their experiences could be yours in the blink of an eye. And in reality, homelessness can happen to literally anyone for factors like loss of income. Y'all know it only truly takes one lost week of wages to become housing insecure. And then you have medical emergencies, domestic violence, being kicked out of your family home due to your gender identity. You have aging out of the foster care system and natural disasters, among a long list of other causes. Not every person looks homeless, y'all, or fits into these stereotypes, which is why it's so important to remember the platinum rule. Do unto others as they would want to be done unto them. Most, if not all of us, have heard that before while growing up, but you never truly know what someone is experiencing or how they want to be supported unless you ask. I experienced housing instability most of my life, but it wasn't until I was a young adult that I was without a place to actually call home. What struck me the most during those years was how unheard and how unseen I felt. I worked very hard to keep up my appearances. I made sure I never wore the same clothes twice in a week. I always smelled nice. I showed up with a smile despite everything I was going through. And with all of that, my choices and my voice was still disappearing right along with my home. And although housing instability was all too familiar, losing everything for me, that was new. Living without a home meant facing countless daily challenges. I was privileged enough to have an SUV for a portion of time, and I maintained my employment. But even still, finding a safe place to to sleep became a constant worry. Accessing basic necessities like food and hygiene products turned into a daily quest with limited funds and literally nowhere to cook. Physical and mental health care that often felt out of reach, and without a stable address, all of the resources felt impossible to receive. Even if I found some resources, I couldn't afford to take off of work because I wouldn't be able to survive if I lost any wages. These struggles were not just physical, they took a heavy mental and emotional toll, and those are still things that I deal with to this day. The systemic challenges that I faced were just as daunting. Affordable housing was scarce and still is, and it remains a constant struggle, with most places requiring proof of income that's 3 times the rent, along with double and even sometimes triple the security deposit. It gets worse if you have poor credit or problematic rental history. So according to the Eviction Lab, our city is the 2nd highest ranked in eviction in the entire US, and that's sitting at 11.44%. And we have 5 out of the top 10 all here in Virginia. So if you have an eviction, which a lot of people experiencing homelessness do, it's almost impossible to find someone who's willing to give you a second chance, which leads folks to try and get into programs and into shelters. But here in Richmond, the options for those shelters and housing support, they're extremely limited. A few that do exist, they have rules that tend to strip away that autonomy. They impose curfews. They do not allow partners to stay together without a child that's considered a family unit. They have a strict no pet policy, along with the fact that most shelters, if not all, have a strict ban on substance use, both inside and outside of the shelter, which is making it harder for individuals recovering from addiction to access care in a safe environment. Then we have rapid rehousing and other supportive services. These are all underfunded, and individuals must navigate long waiting lists for emergency housing. Then there's employment opportunities that have and still are limited, particularly for folks who are facing barriers and discrimination for things like the way they dress or their personal hygiene, their gender identity, their physical, their mental ability. Despite all of that, if you're lucky enough to get matched to a program like I was, you may end up being given false hope, and it could do more harm than good, receiving unclear communication and unrealistic timeframes. I know personally, both from navigating through services and working with our city services, that resources like rapid rehousing, mental health care, domestic violence support, addiction support, permanent supportive housing, social services, and crisis management, they all remain chronically underfunded and understaffed, which leaves individuals stuck in a cycle of uncertainty, trauma, and homelessness. So this brings me to autonomy, the ability to make decisions about one's own life, and it's constantly being stripped away from those experiencing homelessness. Choices about where to sleep and what to eat and how to live, these are things that are frequently dictated by the availability of resources or the rules of the shelters, the programs, or even the friends that you were staying with. This lack of control is deeply, deeply disempowering. Autonomy is essential for mental health and our well-being, and when people have control over their lives, they experience a higher sense of self-esteem and a lower sense of stress and anxiety. And for folks who are experiencing homelessness, regaining this sense of autonomy is a key factor in achieving this long-term stability. The fundamental right to make decisions for yourself is something that we should all have. It fosters that sense of self-respect and value, which is all good for our well-being. So, how can y'all use your autonomy to honor the autonomy of someone else and someone who is experiencing homelessness? First, and in my opinion, this is the easiest. Treat people like people. Make eye contact. Don't just avoid it because you feel as if you have nothing to give. A smile, a nod, a hello. All of these things cost nothing, and they remind people that they are people and they are not invisible. Second, Don't assume don't assume what someone needs. Instead of giving people things blindly, ask them, is there anything in particular that I can get for you today? Is there anything that you need? Don't just hand them a flyer for a resource or a sandwich. Ask them if they like information on resources first, and ask them what type of sandwiches do they eat. It's that simple. Third, support policies that prioritize autonomy. Programs that support housing first models don't make people prove that they deserve a home. They simply just give them one. And because people need a safe place to sleep, that is when they will be able to dream about how they can maintain that stability. And finally, if you donate, donate with dignity. Give clothes that are ready to wear, not the dirty stuff that you meant to throw out last week. If you wouldn't use it, wear it, or eat it, then why should anyone else? It is so important that we empower people to make their own choices. And when we do more than just provide somebody with that support or a sense of community. We provide an opportunity for them to remember that what they want and what they need matters just as much as the next person. The effectiveness of empowering individuals to make their own decisions is not just a personal belief. This is something that's actually backed by research. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, when we empower people experiencing homelessness to make decisions about their lives, they are more likely to achieve that stability and maintain it. So initiatives that prioritize dignity and respect, like Housing First, they've been proven to help individuals transition out of homelessness. I am living proof. I am living proof of what community support and regaining your voice can look like. My lived experience of housing instability and homelessness has led me to a career in advocacy, consulting, social work, and I get to focus on policies and interventions and best practices that promote autonomy, restorative justice, harm reduction, community empowerment, equity, and dignity. All in the effects to help end homelessness, not only for our community, but for communities all over our cities, our country, our state, the world, everywhere. Housing is a human right, and it's about time that we started treating people like people and working hard to ensure that everyone has a chance to have a home. While yes, I'm standing here with you today on the stage, I can still feel what it feels like to be unheard and powerless. And I know the constant fear of experiencing autonomy being snatched away from me if I were to ever experience homelessness again. And that is why I've been working extremely hard over the past 10 years to help give a voice to those who are often overlooked and to help advocate for their rights. This road has by no means been easy, and I am extremely thankful that I have people who remind me that I am a leader, I'm an innovator, a creator, I am a change maker. And as we continue together to break the stigma surrounding homelessness, we will promote further empathy, understanding, and actionable change. So I urge each of you to remember that everyone experiencing homelessness has a story. They all have their own voice, and they all have a right to their own dignity and autonomy. And by balancing support with autonomy, we will be able to foster trust, empower individuals, as well as create lasting connections that lead to equitable change. I know that we can end homelessness, y'all. One community, one family, one student, one human at a time. So let's work together to create a world where everyone is seen, heard, respected. A world where people are simply treated like people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jay, for showing us how we can best treat our neighbors with dignity. What would be your biggest takeaway on what we can do as an audience to create an impact?
So my biggest takeaway, the biggest takeaway I would hope that you all would take with you is to show up. You cannot show up, you cannot support, you cannot help anyone if you don't actually show up first. And when you show up authentically, show up without your privilege, and know that what a person needs, they will tell you if you ask. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jay.
As a brief content warning, the next talk discusses themes of suicide, self-harm, and substance use disorder. If these are topics that may be triggering for you, please feel free to take a moment to exit the theater using the doors at the back. We will be returning with our talks in 1 minute. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Omri Morris, who works here on campus as a certified peer recovery specialist and a peer recovery support coordinator in Ramsden Recovery. She aims to make recovery accessible for all by sharing her story and recovering out loud. Please give a round of applause for Omri Morris.
Drugs, alcohol, mental illness, addiction. What do all these words have in common? Some would say shame, guilt. Others would say choice, moral failing. What if I told you that there's power in hitting a bottom with addiction and asking for help? What if I told you that sharing this lived experience with others can be a life-saving connection for people that are struggling and alone? You may not have gone through these struggles, but you may know someone who has. Someone like me. When I was a young girl, when I grew up, I wanted to become a professional basketball player, following in the footsteps of my dad and his mom and the legacies that they left on the game. Later, that dream evolved into wanting to become a famous singer, actress on Broadway. Never did I have any interest in becoming a drug addict, alcoholic, or being diagnosed as a severely mentally ill person, but those last three identities are what I became. Growing up, I had a very low self-esteem. I desperately wanted to be loved and accepted by everyone. I was willing to do just about anything to get that acceptance, including smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, and partaking in recreational drug use. At first, I hated it. Alcohol made my stomach feel so sick. Marijuana and cigarettes made my chest feel like it was on fire. But eventually, I started experiencing some of the hardships that young people face. And suddenly, I needed it in order to numb all feeling and disassociate from the rest of the world. By the time I got to college at VCU, I was physically, emotionally, and mentally dependent on drugs and alcohol in order to live. I remember waking up in the morning, still drunk or high from the night before, looking for the alcohol bottle to finish before attempting to go to class. I could not imagine sitting in a lecture in the Hibbs building sober. Any moment that I ever had sober was filled with past memories of traumas, letdowns, rejections. I didn't want to be present for any of it. So in order for me to eat, sleep, have sex, socialize, take a shower, go to work, go to school, be around family, I had to be drunk or high. It made the self-hatred and life-loathing hurt a little less. So on May 6, 2013, at 21 years old, in my junior semester, or my junior year at VCU, drug and alcohol dependence robbed me of my money, time, family, relationships, schooling, and finally my sanity. It was that day that I attempted to take my own life via purposeful drug overdose, taking all the drugs and alcohol that I had left. Two days later is when I made the life-changing decision to attend a 30-day rehabilitation center for drug and alcohol addiction. Attending this program, I learned about the disease of addiction and how it works in the brain and in the body. In the DSM-5, it talks about how substance use disorder occurs when the recurrent use of drugs and or alcohol causes clinically and functionally significant impairment, which can lead to health problems and disabilities or failures to meet responsibilities at work, school, or home. People with addiction engage in behaviors that often become compulsive and continuous despite harmful consequences. That was me. I did that. I related to that. Folks in recovery spaces would talk about how they had the inability to control their use once they took their first drink or their first drug. I related to that. They also talked about how they wanted to be free of the obsession to drink and use, and they desperately wanted to live a life in recovery. I related to that. Going to one-on-one therapy sessions, attending recovery support meetings of my choice, committing to rebuilding my relationships with my family, and making new friends in recovery spaces are just some of the things that I've done and continue to do to this day to maintain my sobriety. I no longer am held hostage by the cycle of addiction, and I am properly medicated to help me maintain a healthy state of mind. I now have over 11 years of living happy, joyous, and free. So, today, I identify as a person in long-term recovery living with mental illness. Something I've noticed is that these identities that I used to be ashamed of are now points of connections with others. I mean, addiction affects everyone, whether it's something that you've experienced or you know someone who's gone through it. Society has made addiction a taboo topic to talk about because of the focus being on the sickness rather than the recovery from the sickness. Recovering out loud to me means being honest and open about my experience and my identity, regardless of what society deems socially acceptable. I remember the first time that I opened up to someone and I was brave enough to be honest about my experience with addiction and mental illness. I experienced this rush of radical self-acceptance and love that I had been searching for all my life in drugs and alcohol and never found it. And then when they would talk to me, they felt safe in sharing their lived experience with addiction or mental illness without judgment or fear or stigma. The result of these positive interactions, connection above all else, and hope that people actually can recover from this deadly disease instead of just dying from it. Months later, I found out that I could have a career bonding with people using this lived experience. It's called being a certified peer recovery specialist. The Virginia Certification Board defines a CPRS as someone with lived experience with recovering from addiction or recovering from mental illness, and that person is willing to share that lived experience with other people who may be struggling in hopes that it makes them feel like recovery is possible for them. They also are plugged into different recovery resources in the area, like different treatment modalities or recovery support meetings. This meant that I could have a job being authentically myself by using the most painful years of my life as my biggest assets. I could focus on the recovery from the sickness instead of just the sickness. I started my career in clinical surroundings, but then I came to Ramsey Recovery at VCU. Ramsey Recovery is a collegiate recovery program here on this campus that supports students that are in recovery from addiction and mental illness. It is a physical clubhouse space that offers services like recovery housing support, one-on-one peer recovery coaching, recovery education seminars, trips, and monthly dinners that help build community and celebrate the recovery lifestyle. Recovering out loud looks different for everyone. It does not look the same. I choose to recover out loud by working as a CPRS because it's the type of support that I needed early on in order to believe that I was worth recovery. I will never forget the first time that I met my first CPRS in rehab. Her name was Heidi, and she made recovery visible and accessible and attainable for me. So now I get to be that for others. A lot of folks in recovery spaces choose to recover out loud by attending recovery support meetings in public spaces like treatment centers, church basements. They also choose to be open about their recovery status with their friends and family and medical providers in order to increase the amount of accountability around them in staying well. I like to recover out loud by adding it as a simple identifier alongside my pronouns. Like in most spaces, I introduce myself as, my name is Amri Morris, I use she, her pronouns, and I am a Black, queer mom in recovery. If you're an ally to the recovery community, consider carrying a list of recovery supports and treatment modalities in your area, maybe in your car or in your desk at work, just in case you run into somebody that wants that kind of help. And then maybe offer to go with them to get help for their addictive behaviors. Consider wearing stickers or pins that support your local recovery community. It lets folks know that you're a safe person to come talk to. Consider maybe carrying Narcan on you, which is the life-saving medication that reverses the effects of opioid overdoses. Recovering out loud is something that saves my life, because if I remain vigilant and being honest and authentic about who I am and my experience, I'm more likely to stay well and sober. Recovering out loud looks different for everyone. It's about finding what works best for you. You all being in this audience today is so incredibly healing for folks like me, because you're willing to sit here and listen to the experience of someone who has struggled with addiction and mental illness, who is also living in recovery, and you're willing to learn more about different ways to recover out loud. Thank you for being a part of this experience. Changing the narrative about addiction, mental illness, recovering out loud, it starts with you. Let's recover out loud together. Thank you for allowing me to share my story.
Thank you so much, Omri, for sharing your story and leading by example. How are you able to open up about such a personal topic, either as the recovery ally or the person in recovery?
For me, I think the reason why I'm able to open up is, like I shared in my talk, my demons can't survive in the light. The more that I talk about my experience on good days, bad days, and different days, it humanizes it. It normalizes it. Because addiction and recovery, addiction doesn't really discriminate, doesn't care about where you come from, who your family is, how many degrees you hold. And so the more that we normalize talking about it, the more that we can move towards recovery and wellness that's accessible for all people.
Thank you so much, Omri, for encouraging recovery out loud.
Thank you.
Performance from Shayla Kyle, also known as Ayla. She's a junior at VCU pursuing a BFA in graphic design, and she was part of a student-produced album from Professor Milazzo's Media Entrepreneurship class. She'll be performing VCU from one of her own EPs today. Please welcome Ayla to the stage.
Hey, I'm Isla. I will be performing a song called With You off of my first EP. So feel free to vibe, feel free to move. Yeah, let's have a good time. Period. Ooh, there you go. Y'all feeling that? Hold on. Hey, hey, I wanna deal with you. Know a lot about your mind, I wanna feel with you. A lot of skill with you, but on the low course side, trying to get a cosigner. I wanna chill with you, we might be running out of time, I'll keep it real with you. So what's the deal with you? Been on my mind low tight, be there all night. I wanna deal with you. So what's the deal with you? So what's the deal with you? I wanna deal with you. When you run out of time, I'll keep it real with you. So what's the deal with you? Been on my mind all time, wanna be all night. Got my, yeah, you got my attention, alright. Love the way you're talking my own mind. Let's get talking about the late nights. This back's well dressed. Don't know just how you did it, but you leave me impressed. Don't understand your pedigree, what leaves you obsessed. But I know about your energy, you got me in check. Why these other people playing with you? You got some diamonds in your mind, some deeper feelings with you. You got my hands behind my back, you know I'm sticking with you. Kick back, riding on this wavy color 20s with you. Hold on, it ain't that deep, just wanna mingle with you and make it moves for all I know. You ain't even single issue. It's like a ghost, I only see you, just a little miss you. I mean, you gotta understand that's why I'm feeling with you. I'm not the type to follow guys, really. Got big eyes like a Superman, a prize, really.
lately. I was just minding on my own, you go surprise, baby. Like, oh my God, whether you are to find them eyes, baby. You got a prize of your own, I'm pulling S to be told. Like there's a hint or a code in all your media, but there's no one to behold. It's just your magic, you only got my vote if you want it. A new girl, baby. I wanna chill with you, know a lot about your mind, I wanna feel with you. A lot of skill with you, been on the low course side, trying to get a cosign. I wanna chill with you, might be running out of time, I keep it real with you. So what's the deal with you? But I'm on my low tight, wanna be there all night. Get your hands up, come on, hey, now get your hands up, hey, rock with me now, hey, hey, yeah. No, I feel with you, you know I really wanna deal with you, hey, so can I deal with you, hey. So can I chill with you? I know the vibe, take my time to kill with you. I love you through with you, so when the time's just right, do whatever you like. I wanna chill with you, we might be running out of time, I keep it real with you. So what's the deal with you? Been on my mind, low tight, wanna be there all night. That was me, y'all. Thank you for having me. Play me out. That's all.
Wow. Thank you, Isla, for such a wonderful performance. You're welcome. Our next speaker is Sathwik Nag, a decision scientist pursuing a master's in decision analytics on the science track. Sathwik will be sharing his research in biomimicry and nature-inspired technology. Please give him a warm welcome.
Last winter, I was one of the lucky ones. I left Los Angeles just a day before the wildfires tore through the same breathtaking views I had just visited. A thought came to me. What if I was one of the last people to see those beautiful places like that? If I, a visitor, felt this overwhelming sense of loss, what about the people who have stayed there their entire lives? The people who have lost their homes, their livelihoods, their community, their history. Imagine leaving your hometown just to figure out that there's no hometown left to return to. That feeling powerless, heartbroken, frustrated stayed with me. And a question began to haunt me. What can I do? What can we do? At first, I ranted. I complained to my parents how unfair it all was. And like any great parents, they hit me with something simple yet profound. Act to create impact. But how? What could I, an engineer turned business student, possibly do to something as colossal as climate change? My work has always revolved around solving complex problems, be it in engineering, business, or analytics. From optimizing mechanical and aerospace systems to analyzing market trends and decision-making strategies, I've learned that the best solutions comes when you look at the challenges differently. Yet today, we are facing one of the biggest challenges in the world, climate change. Nature doesn't fight change. It accepts, adapts, and thrives and tries to innovate. Climate change is no longer a distant threat. It's here, it's happening, and it's expensive. According to World Economic Forum, $16 million per hour. Yes, that's how much the climate change is costing us today. And by 2050, the cost of climate-related damage is about to reach $3.1 trillion per year. We can't afford to sit on the sidelines. And if there's one thing nature has mastered, is its efficiency, wasting nothing, optimizing everything. And that's where biomimicry comes in. What is biomimicry? Biomimicry, in simple terms, is a practice of learning from nature to solve human challenges. It means looking at the plants, animals, ecosystems around you, and trying to take inspiration of how nature has evolved for millions of years and trying to adapt those strategies to solve your everyday problems, be it in technology, design, or lives. Especially in energy industry, because nature doesn't just generate energy, it conserves, reserves, and directs. And if we can apply those principles, we can revolutionize how we produce, store, and distribute clean energy today. Engineers have studied shark skin and humpback whale fins to modify the designs of wind turbines that can reduce the drag and increase the efficiency by many folds. Not just that, scientists are taking inspiration from butterfly wings. One interesting fact, just like soap bubbles, the color of butterfly is not because of any pigment, but it is because of the unique structure on its scales. And scientists are taking this as an inspiration to rebuild the solar cells and surfaces because they are able to create absolute dark surfaces. So darker the surface, more the energy generation, thereby increasing the energy generation. And even beehives are inspiring how the battery technology solutions are designed today because it ensures highest energy density, keeping it lightweight. Even there's one beautiful property that lotus leaves have. Lotus leaves have this unique property of self-cleaning. And this self-cleaning property of lotus leaves is inspiring the painting and coating industries across the globe. But biomimicry and the nature's science is not limited to energy. It has mastered aerodynamics, drag, efficiency in flight. From birds gliding miles together effortlessly to the amphibians and mammals inside the ocean, they've mastered everything, especially the challenges we face today in the field of aerospace and transportation. Engineers are taking inspiration from albatross wings and falcon wings because albatross is a creature with highest wingspan in the world. And this is helping the designers to build flights with lowest fuel consumption and highest efficiency. The fires in LA were irreversible, and it was not just a natural disaster. It was a financial catastrophe. The cost of rebuilding the localities, the loss of livelihoods, the economic ripple effect, it all adds up. And this is not just an isolated event. Climate change is hitting economies as hard as it is hitting ecosystems. This brings us to a crucial realization that sustainability is not just an ethical choice, it's an economic one. Some companies are even monetizing sustainability. Companies are making boatloads of money by selling carbon credits and trading excess clean energy. But biomimicry is not just limited to engineers and scientists. It's a mindset. It's a mindset that we students, professionals across all disciplines can apply. But how? The key is in shifting how you approach problem. Instead of forcing solutions, let's think like nature. If you're a student trying to improve your focus, let's apply Pomodoro technique, a technique inspired by nature's ultradian rhythm. Periods of deep focus followed by short breaks, just like microorganisms. If you're an engineer or designer, let's rethink the materials and structure we are building. Let's take inspiration just like the termite-inspired ventilation systems in commercial buildings, ensuring the buildings are green and sustainable. If you're a business student, let's apply circular economy principles and build models that waste nothing and maximize the energy and resource utilization. There's this concept called hive mind, which is inspired by the social insects like bees and ants. So what do we get? What does that teach us? There's this simple concept called decentralized decision making, but ensuring collective problem solving. And in this era of artificial intelligence, generative AI, LLMs, we can even take inspiration from fungal networks. The mycelium fungus, the network which it has this unique property of responding to the environmental cues. And if we can apply those principles, we can create emotionally intelligent systems that are decentralized and gives you responses based on individual interactions, yet giving accurate results. If you're an artist or storyteller, we can take inspiration from the beautiful nature's fractals and symmetry and bring more and more organic and immersive designs. As I said, biomimicry is a mindset that anyone can apply. But how do we think like nature? And that's where the seek, tweak, peak framework comes in. Seek inspiration, look at our own surroundings, look at how nature has mastered design to attain this ultimate efficiency. Tweak, modify your approach to solve your everyday problems. Implement those nature-inspired strategies in your work or processes. Peak, optimize and make sure that you're pushing the limits to make those new solutions and ideas bring into action and make it refined so that it works better than before. As I said, biomimicry is a mindset because having right knowledge is not just enough. Having the right mindset and the right intent is just as important. And this reminds me of one of the lessons my parents have taught. It's a lesson from Bhagavad Gita. It goes like, Karmanye vadika raste mapaleshu kadachana, which means you have the right to perform your duty, but never to the fruits of your actions. It means focus on the actions, not the results. Because we often hesitate to take actions thinking that our mere individual efforts don't make any difference. But the lesson teaches us that the action itself is what matters. You don't have to wait for the perfect solution. Just focus on what you can do right now and make sure you trust that every step you take in the right direction will bring you closer to the bigger change you seek. Because nature is teaching us that. And the beauty of biomimicry is that you don't have to invent new solutions. You just have to rediscover what nature already knows. And if you implement these nature-inspired strategies, you can revolutionize. For example, the city of Singapore is redesigning its urban landscape based on biomimicry. One of their initiatives include designing buildings that function just like forests, capturing carbon and promoting biodiversity. And this is just one example of how applying nature's strategies can not just lead to incremental improvements, but a massive system-wide transformation. The fires in LA, the damage it caused is irreversible, but what we build next is still in our hands. If a desert plant can survive on nothing but air and sunlight, why can't we build systems that do the same? Let's seek inspiration, tweak our approach, and reach the peak of innovation. Because the answers are here, they've always been here. The future isn't something we wait and implore, it is something we build and explore. Thank you.
Thank you, Sathvik, for your guidance. Sorry. Thank you, Sathvik, for your insights into the guidance nature has for us. Is there any time that the seek, tweak, peak algorithm has been useful in your daily life?
Good question. Absolutely. One of the recent instances where I used the seek, peak, tweak framework was, it's a simple stuff. And I was trying to carry a cup of coffee when I was walking. I usually spilled it over because of the natural frequency. So I tried to apply that framework to solve this problem. Seek. I wanted to seek inspiration from nature to solve this problem. That's when I got to know that the penguins, the way it walks on ice is a little different than it usually walks. Instead of taking long, abrupt steps, it takes short and slower and sturdier steps. Tweak. I wanted to adopt that, not literally though, but instead of taking abrupt steps, I started taking small and smooth and controlled steps. It actually helped in dampening the vibrations. Not just that, I also figured out that when you're trying to hold the coffee and if you're keeping the hand stiff, it'll increase the vibrations. Instead of that, you can suspend the hand. It's actually an inspiration from the giraffe. If you observe the giraffe running, its long neck feels like fluid. That's how nature handles fluid movement. So peak, one more thing I observed from this experiment was, instead of holding the cup on the side, if you hold it on the top, even that helps in dampening the vibrations. I know it's a very small example, but that's how biomimicry works. It can be applied from anything small as carrying a cup of coffee to solving complex problems like aerospace problems. Thank you. Thank you. Oof, all the best.
Thank you so much, Sathvik, for wonderful reframing of our problem-solving processes. Next, we'll welcome Serena Pearl, a junior pursuing a Bachelor in the Arts in Printmaking and Painting. Serena will be sharing her insights into intentional design, gained firsthand through her experience and research as a muralist portraying the urban heat island effect. Please give her a round of applause.
As a freshman at VCU, I lived off campus, and I biked to class every day to go to my art building. On my bike ride, I'd pass through the shaded streets of Monroe Park to the more hot and exposed areas of Broad Street. As I got to Broad Street, I would notice a significant temperature increase. I later learned that this was the urban heat island effect, where urban areas absorb significantly more heat than rural and suburban areas because urban areas have more temperature-absorbing materials like concrete and asphalt compared to rural and suburban areas, which have more vegetation to provide shade and cooling. But this isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. According to the World Health Organization, extreme heat can exacerbate health risks like dehydration and heat stroke. And in Richmond, according to the New York Times, red line neighborhoods, which are neighborhoods historically denied investments due to racist housing policies, experience temperatures up to 10 degrees higher than wealthier, greener neighborhoods in Richmond. As I biked through Richmond, I also got to know its thriving mural culture. There's seemingly a mural on almost every street. And initially I just viewed them as eye-catching decorations, but over time I began to realize that they can do more than just beautify a city. They can serve as powerful tools for education and awareness. As I finished my bike ride to the Bow Street parking deck, where I took my art foundation classes, I would take the elevator up to eat outside on the rooftop, to eat lunch. And as I ate lunch, I would stare at this blank fake stucco wall. The rooftop of the parking deck was like a microcosm of the urban heat island effect. It was hot, uncomfortable, and had no shade. And now, if you ever walked to the Lombardi Kroger and looked up while you got groceries, you've probably seen the mural I painted, visualizing the urban heat island effect right in the heart of Richmond. As an artist and a painter, I've come to understand that materials and intentional design matter deeply. For instance, the transparency of watercolor compared to the opaqueness of acrylic paint can dramatically change the entire tone of a piece. You can layer oil paints on top of acrylics, but not the reverse. Even small design choices, like using a natural-haired paintbrush versus a synthetic one, can change an entire painting. And while these material and design choices might not seem apparent, all these small design and material choices mirror the choices we make in our cities. The concrete we walk on, the asphalt we drive over, the vegetation, or lack thereof, all impact how we experience the heat in Richmond. We have the data to show these heat disparities, but numerical data can often feel abstract and inaccessible. So how can we visualize this invisible heat data? I believe the answer lies in public art. Public art has the unique ability to engage everyone regardless of background or education. And when placed in vital locations like bus stops, transit hubs, grocery stores, it's right on the streets where everyone can see, feel, and visualize it. The mural I painted wasn't just a creative project. It was a scientific study in design and materials. I used thermal infrared photography to measure the heat absorption of my paint. I painted two contrasting cities, an urban heat island and a sustainable city. I personified these cities as figures so the viewer can put themselves inside the city. The red figure, representing an urban heat island, appears tense and overwhelmed. It's surrounded by concrete infrastructure, asphalted roads, and no vegetation. The blue figure, a city modeled on sustainable foundations, is surrounded by greenery, garden rooftops, wildlife, and reflective materials. Now, what did the data show? Let me first walk you through what thermal infrared photography is and how to read it. Thermal infrared photography is used to visualize heat retention data. It visualizes heat retention data through colors, and you can use a variety of colors and color palettes, but in my case, I chose the Iron Bow palette, which displays its hottest temperatures as whites, yellows, and oranges, and its coolest temperatures as dark blues and purples. The first thing that we noticed is that color matters deeply, specifically the shades of colors we use. Darker shades absorb more heat than lighter shades. And you can visualize this. Imagine in the summer, you're barefoot, and you're walking on two different types of surfaces, a dark asphalted road or a light concrete sidewalk. The road is going to absorb more heat with its darker color compared to the sidewalk. And we saw the same thing in the mural. When I painted the urban heat island, I specifically painted it with darker shades. And as you can see in the thermal infrared capture, the yellows and the oranges reflect hotter temperatures compared to the sustainable city, which uses more light colors that provides cooling. The next thing that I noticed is that the reflectivity of our materials matter deeply. I painted the sustainable city with a solar reflective paint. And you might be wondering what solar reflective paints are. They're basically paints that are designed with tiny ceramic spheres to help bounce back the sun's rays and reduce surface temperature. And lastly, even the small mark-making techniques that I use in my studio practice, like stippling, layering, blending, and gradients, they impacted the heat absorption in the thermal infrared capture. As you can see in this example, I painted a gradient, a tonal gradient, going from dark to light. It started from a dark fuchsia, going to a magenta, to a light pink, all the way to a white. And in the background of the mural, you can see a thermal gradient going from hot all the way to cool. The shades of colors we use, the reflectivity of our materials, and the intentional way we design our cities all impact how we experience the heat in Richmond. Public art is more than just decoration. It has the power to inform, engage, and connect everyone with visuals that are both actionable and memorable. Think of the mural that you pass on your way to work, running errands, or going to class. The visual is actively shaping the perspective of the space you inhabit. You don't need to purchase a ticket to go to a museum, access academic journals, or know technical jargon, and this can scale beyond Richmond. Imagine murals in other communities, addressing other climate challenges like flooding or air pollution, each transforming the invisible to visible. Because when we give people the language to talk about these issues, we more importantly give them the motivation to act upon them. These changes are possible, but they start with awareness. So the next time you see a mural in Richmond, I want you to ask yourself these 4 questions. 1, what message does the mural convey? 2, how does its materials, mark-making techniques, and colors reinforce this message? 3, how does its scale, location, and placement impact the way we view the mural? For instance, how does a mural that's placed on Carey Street, covering a shop that's 5 by 5 feet, carry a different impact than a mural on Broad Street covering an entire wall of a pharmacy? And lastly, I want you to ask yourself, what real-world solutions does it invite? Public art has the power to transform Richmond. To all the artists, I want you to think about how you can use your creativity to make complex issues more relatable. To the scientists and policymakers, I want you to collaborate with artists to make your data more visual. Our fields are not as separate as you may think. And to everyone else, I want you to not only engage with the public art around you, but to advocate for the funding for the arts and the sciences. Because when we make the invisible visible, we have the power to transform Richmond into a more equitable and resilient city. Thank you.
Thank you, Serena, for opening our eyes to a deeper engagement with our environment. I'd like to learn more about your process. What was the challenge you faced when creating your mural?
Thank you. I'd say the hardest challenge was dealing with the weather. When I was doing the research project, we had to take most of the thermal infrared images before the end of the summer, so it was still hot outside. So I was kind of painting from July to August, and it's kind of like right in the heat of the summer. So I woke up at 3 a.m. every day to avoid the heat when the sun directly hit the mural, so I could kind of get most of the painting done. And then besides that, just dealing with weather like rain, and at the time, it was the summer of 2023 when the Canadian wildfires happened. So there's about 2 weeks where I couldn't paint because of the smoke. But yeah, I'd say the weather was the hardest part.
All right, thank you again for showing the power of public art.
Thank you.
Lastly, we have Dr. Amy Tudor, an end-of-life doula, poet, and thanatologist who currently teaches at the Department of Focused Inquiry. She will be discussing her journey into the study of death and what the dead and dying can teach us. Please welcome Dr. Tudor to the stage.
So, science tells us that there is no such thing as ghosts. I know some of you will be very relieved to hear this. Others will take issue with it. I know this because every time I talk about this, every time I lecture about it, somebody will come up to me afterwards and swear they have seen a ghost or talked to a ghost. But in an academic environment, we have to bow to the absence or presence of scientific data. And despite all the years of looking by researchers, by ghost hunters, there is no hard evidence that ghosts exist. Now, this is really different from, say, Eastern cultures where ghosts are considered to be quite real. These are cultures where ghosts inhabit not just the imagination, but the daily lives of people. In Japan, for example, people build home altars where the dead ancestors live and are offered prayer and food every day. In China, during the Festival of the Hungry Ghost, people will actually bring their clothes in to dry inside the house so that ghosts are not tempted outside to put on their shirts and walk into the house. But what we do have evidence of in the West, by which I mean Europe and countries like the US that are influenced by European tradition, is that there is a weird consistency to what people say they've seen when they say they've seen a ghost. Robert J. Kastenbaum takes us through these Western ghost tropes in his amazing book, Death, Society, and Human Experience. Here's some of these ghost tropes. There's the deathbed companion or bedside companion. This is a figure that takes the form of like an old man, like Santa Claus, or a kindly nurse, or sometimes even an angel. But when the sick person later says, "Who was that person who was hanging out by my bed?" they're told that no one was ever there. There's the warn against danger. This is a figure that shows up at like an airport gate. And you're sitting there and you look over and this person looks at you and says, "Don't get on the plane. It's going to crash." And after you've chucked your boarding pass and headed for the exit, because who wouldn't, right? You look back and there's nobody there. There's the comforter in crisis. This one shows up at like airport or car crashes. Staying with the gravely injured person and reassuring them that help is coming. But then once the ambulance gets there and they're going in, they say, "Where was the person who was just here?" And they're told, "Nobody was here when we got here." And finally, there is the crisis apparition. This is the figure of a loved one who appears suddenly in your living room right before you get the phone call that they've died. So despite the fact that we don't have any evidence for the existence of ghosts, clearly something is haunting our bedsides and our accidents and our airport gates, right? But if it's not ghosts, what is it then? Well, I've been asking myself this question for a long time. I've been working in the field of thanatology, which is the study of death, since the mid-2000s. First as an academic and now as a death doula, end-of-life doula. I didn't start off in death work, though. I started off as a poet. So after I got my undergraduate degree, I decided to follow my heart And I came here to VCU to do my MFA in creative writing. Here I met the remarkable poet, Larry Levis, who was a master of the elegy form, which are poems about the dead, and of fine art photography. We used to sit up in his house in Churchill over dinner and talk about both of these. These conversations about the elegy and about the weird persistence of that image you see in a photograph would become the foundations of my work. Later, I was drawn to the bedsides of the dying and to work with indigents, at the graves of indigent people. I'd come to understand through all of my study, because I ended up getting that doctorate in interdisciplinary humanities and thanatology. Through all that study, I had discovered that culture didn't want us to talk about death at all, right? But I also knew that we were desperate for a place to talk about it. This is how I knew. If I was sitting next to a stranger somewhere at an airport gate or, somewhere, and they'd being friendly, they'd say, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" And I'd say, "Oh, I teach." And they'd say, "What do you teach?" I started to notice that my responsive death studies were eliciting one of two consistent responses. They were either completely weirded out and had no interest in riding on the plane with me, or they started filling me up with stories. Here's one. One day I was shopping, and pushing my cart through a place, and I keep seeing this older woman who is standing next to the place where they sell bicycles. And I see her next to this screaming gaudy yellow bike. And then she goes over to the bland ones that we're all supposed to buy. And I kept pushing my way through, and I'm pushing, and I see, and she's back next to the yellow one. And then she's over here, next to the age-appropriate Social Security silver bikes, And finally, on one of the passes, I just leaned into her, and I said, "Get the yellow one. You know you want to get the yellow one." And she just burst into tears. I immediately apologized. She reached over and she put her hand on my arm and she said, No, it's just that my husband who just died had a bike that was just like that. So I winced a little. I had not meant to be trodden on her grief, but at least studying death had told me what the right thing to say was, which is I said, "Well, then you should definitely get the yellow bike. Who cares what anybody else thinks?" There are so many people, you all, who are carrying around grief like this. There's the woman who was sitting next to me in physical therapy on the exercise bike, who, when she found out what I taught, started telling me the story about a baby she had lost in the 60s. This story just like unspooling out of her like this black ribbon until she just gave in to the grief. And she said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. I haven't even told my husband that story." There's the cabbie in London who, when I went to pay for my fare, he just waved me off and he said, "You just had to hear the whole story of my dad dying. You already paid." It's the neighbor, the friend, the student. It's just story on story on story, right? Our lives are stories. And death is part of it. It's the end of it, depending on what you believe, but it's the part we're not allowed to tell. So if somebody like me shows up who has any degree of comfort with it at all, they will conjure the dead with words. A friend of mine once said, "Hey, have you ever thought of just telling people you teach accounting? Just avoid this whole thing." But I don't think I could do that. I mean, for one thing, a lie is a terrible way to start a conversation. For another, I couldn't fake a conversation about accounting to save my life, okay? And for the other, I think the least we can do is listen to each other, So I started thinking, if this is what the living need to talk about, imagine what the dying need to say. And that's what drove me to move to become an end-of-life doula. Moving finally from death as this academic pursuit to dying itself, as told by the dying, right? Their hopes, their anxieties, their experiences of it, their stories, their ghosts. Something you need to know about the dying process that you might not know. People who are nearing their death sometimes see people who aren't there. It's one of the many forms of what we call NDA, or nearing death awareness. They may also do things like, they may tell you they see heaven, but they're frustratingly vague when you ask them to describe it. They'll be like, oh, there's just, there's no words. I can't describe it. You know, they may reach above them towards the ceiling or towards people or pets who are not there. They may actually tell you when they're going to die. They may say, I'm going to die tonight, or I won't be here this weekend when my brother visits, right? And they may start talking about leaving in strange ways. They'll say, I need you to get my passport. Or they'll say, we got to check out of this hotel, or my cab is here. This is part of what people need to say about something they know nothing about. The mind doesn't know death yet, right? But it does know leaving, and it knows being left. And weirdly, those death sightings that we're talking about, they're like the ghost tropes. There is a weird consistency to the pattern. They start off, the further they are from death, they start off seeing strangers. And as death gets closer, the people become old friends, old neighbors. And it can be sort of predictive, weirdly. There's a common understanding in death work that once the spouse shows up, they have very little time left. So if the mind doesn't know death, but it knows leaving, it chooses to talk about this impending departure with passports and airport gates, with metaphor. The dying are incredible users of metaphor. So maybe starting off as a poet wasn't the worst thing, right? To figure out what the dying are trying to say. Maybe we're all poets in the end. I think, in fact, that metaphor is the key to those Western ghosts. It's some trick our brain is playing on us so that someone can be there when we need them the most. I mean, think about it. Look at that bedside companion. Who doesn't want somebody to be watching over them when they're at their most vulnerable like that, comforting them? Think about that warn against danger. Wouldn't it be amazing if somebody could step in when you're in mortal danger and save you from your fate? That comforter in crisis, don't we all hope that there would be some kind stranger if we were in that position, alone, to stay with us until help arrives? And what one of us who has lost someone we love would not give anything to see them one more time before they're gone to us here forever? Think about it. We spend all this time worrying about these ghosts and haunted houses and things that go bump in the night. They're not real. But something is. This is an amazing field that I'm in, and I highly recommend it to anybody thinking about something to do. You know? It's an amazing field. Yeah, sometimes people ask me, they say, hey, doesn't it bother you to deal with death all the time? And yeah, sometimes it does. It does. The pandemic was hard, for example, you know. But it's also a field that keeps giving. It's a field that keeps giving. It's not death that bothers me usually, though. What bothers me is listening to what haunts dying people. And what haunts dying people is regret. That is what we should all be afraid of. And the regrets of the dying, you all, are more terrifying than anything that Hollywood could ever come up with. There's a weird consistency to this, too. Like the Western ghosts. Like what we see in NDA and those patterns. It's almost as if we strip all of this away, we're all the same. you know? Bronnie Ware writes about these in her amazing book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. I'll give you 3 of them if you want the other 2. You know where the book is. What are the dying regret? 1, the dying regret that they worked so hard all the time. They realized that they had lived to work and not work so they could have a life. They regret that they didn't have the courage to speak their true feelings to the people in their lives. Maybe they had inauthentic relationships. Maybe they kept toxic or harmless people in their lives much longer than they should have, and they lost that time. And they were really sad that they lost their friends, right? It's really easy to do, after all. I mean, we're working all the time, you know? But what the dying want around them at the end are their friends. I'll add one. Don't make bucket lists, people. Make plans. Make plans. I mean, 15% of men, 10% of women never even make it to retirement age. So as the poet Robert Herrick said so well, gather ye rosebuds while ye may. Don't die with the dying's regrets. I mean, your life is a story. You're writing it right now. I mean, good chapters and chapters that are going to scare you to read later, okay? And you need to tell those stories. And somebody needs to listen to them too, okay? So be that person. Make time and make space for people to tell those stories to you, even the ones that make you uncomfortable. Just by listening to people sometimes, you offer an amazing sense of absolution to people sometimes, or even permission. I mean, suddenly, that gaudy yellow bike is going to be perfect for somebody. May we all be less haunted by ghosts and by regret. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tudor,
You're
for
welcome.
sharing your experience with death and how understanding it can help all of us lead more fulfilled lives. If I may ask you a personal question, what is one story from your life that you would like us to remember you by when you pass on?
I think that is a question that is better left for the people who are left. But I will say this. I am a teacher. And I mean that not in I teach. I work as a teacher. I'm a teacher. Every time I have ever learned to do something, I end up teaching it. I learned to scuba dive. I teach scuba diving. I love to travel around the world. I do study abroad. And I hope that every single one of my students, no matter who they are in my life, has a story that is about something that I've taught them.
Thank you. I know I certainly do. You've taught me much, whether it's just in a classroom or in a conversation with you. And I think that your identity as a teacher honestly encapsulates everything that's brought you to this point, including this stage and this moment.
Thank you.
Thank you again for teaching us how we can use stories to bridge the gap between ourselves and the departed.
Thank you for asking me.
And that officially concludes our TEDxVCU 2025 event. At this time, we would like to thank the VCU Division of Student Affairs and the Student Involvement Team for providing us with the resources, the support, and the spaces that allow this program to flourish. With Printing, for printing the programs you are all holding in your hands right now. And Build RVA, a makerspace in Scott's Addition, for their expertise in building the stage elements that you see up here.
At this time, we'd like the entire planning team to join us on stage. These are the people that made tonight's event possible. All right. Hey guys, how's it going? Looks like we're missing about half our people.
They're
there
making their
we
way
go.
over.
All right. Hi, friends. Again, their hard work and dedication made tonight possible. The curation team is led by Harish, who worked closely with his former co-lead Franny in order to select the talks that you saw here tonight. He and the curation team worked with every speaker to ensure that they felt empowered to take the stage and share their ideas with you. Without them, this event would not be possible. The marketing team, led by Lily, gave shape and color to our theme, Bloom, by designing the graphics that you see on stage here tonight. Without their imagery and outreach, many of you would not be here in this theater with us.
The production engagement team, led by Shruti and Manuela, brought marketing's vision to life, designing these stage elements, decorating that hallway, and doing everything that they can to make your experience tonight as memorable as possible. They've also hosted 3 Salons events throughout the year, giving more opportunities to the TEDxVCU community to come together. We'd also like to thank Justin Reibold, our staff advisor and valued mentor. He revived this program 5 years ago, and without his guidance and support, TEDxVCU as a whole would not exist, and many of us would not be the leaders that we are today. Thank you, Justin, for continuing to encourage us to bloom in every aspect of our lives.
Please give one more round of applause for this talented team and the hard work they've done. If you're interested in joining any of these teams and helping put on more of these events, follow our Instagram at TEDxVCU for announcements about our planning team application opening. We additionally encourage you to follow our Instagram just to keep up to date on all things TEDxVCU. Upon exiting the theater, we encourage you to chat with today's participants and give feedback on today's presentations using the individual feedback boxes located outside the theater.
And after you all leave your feedback for our wonderful speakers and performer today, you guys will have a chance to enter into a drawing for a prize. More information on that can be found outside the theater. And to encourage you all to remember this incredible event, we encourage you to take pictures at our photo booth right outside. Feel free to post these and tag us on social media at TEDxVCU. We will see you out there.
Thank you.